Okay, here we go.
Hi, folks. It's me, Jonathan Tapp, with the Outlaw Kenworth W900. Was in the 90s. We're gonna start from Portland, Oregon. So we're gonna start with water
Turn
for
right.
St. Louis. So so and
Get ready to
let's
turn
get
right.
right to it. And by going for a ride.
Turn right. ready to roll. Finding a new route.
thenewyorker.com. David Remnick will be back with you next week. Thanks for listening.
The New Yorker Radio Hour is a co-production of WNYC and The New Yorker. Our theme music was composed and performed by Merrill Garbus of Tune Yards, with additional music by Louis Mitchell and Jared Paul. This episode was produced by Max Balton, Adam Howard, David Krasnow, Jeffrey Masters, Louis Mitchell, Jared Paul, and Ursula Summer.
We had special assistance on this episode from Sarah Nix.
The New Yorker Radio Hour is supported in part by the Chirina Endowment Fund.
This is 89.3 WRKF, Baton Rouge Public Radio. Listen to WRKF Classical on your smart speaker. Simply ask it to play WRKF HD2.
Support for WRKF provided by our members and by LaCour's Carpet World, your local family-owned flooring store. Discover our curated collection of beautiful wool carpet offering natural comfort, lasting durability, and true sustainability. Visit our showroom on Perkins by College or online at lacoursbr.com.
Listening to news with facts must be public radio, and member support keeps it going. Stand with the facts. Become a member of WRKF, your locally owned and operated public radio station. Every gift makes a difference. It's quick and easy at WRKF.org.
The Red Magnolia Theater Company presents Men on Boats, a dramedy of the Powell exhibition, August 21st through 23rd and 28th through 30th at the Carrie Siraj Community Arts Center. More information at redmagnoliatc.org.
What in a society should we do with the people who have committed the most horrific, heinous crimes? To some, there is only one answer that gives victims the justice they deserve, and that is death. But these days, our country is split on the death penalty, with half in favor and half against. So, should the rule be an eye for an eye? I'm John Donvan. This week on Open to Debate, should we abolish the death penalty?
This evening at 7 on 89.3 WRKF.
From WHYY and PRX, this is Sports in America. I'm David Green. And today, we're going to listen back to a conversation I had with one of the prominent voices in the sports media landscape, Pablo Torre. He's host of Pablo Torre Finds Out from the Athletic Podcast Network. And one of the reasons I wanted to revisit this conversation is that Pablo is on an absolute heater, leading investigations on some of the most widely reported stories in sports, from the dodgy personal life of one of football's most famous figures to an exclusive on a salary cap scandal in the NBA. This year, that NBA reporting series won Pablo the Pulitzer Prize in audio reporting, by the way, casual. In this conversation, Pablo and I talk about his unique approach to sports reporting and why sports are more valuable than ever as a way to cut through the noise in our divided world. That's all coming up on Sports in America.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Janine Herbst. The U.S. hasn't attacked Iran in 2 straight days, and Iran has also halted strike. This as there's growing concern in Congress about how the war is going. It's now in its 6th month. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Zelensky, who's set to meet President Trump in Washington this week, says his country bombed a ship traveling between Iran and Russia that was loaded with military supplies. As NPR's Greg Myrie reports, the attack points to the links between the war in Ukraine and the war in Iran.
President Zelensky said Ukraine carried out long-range strikes in the Caspian Sea that included hitting a ship that was, quote, transporting military cargo in cooperation with Iran. The president did not provide details. Russia and Iran both have a coastline on the Caspian and use the sea for trade. Meanwhile, Iran condemned the Ukrainian attack on what it called an Iranian commercial vessel. Iran said one sailor was killed and another injured. Russia and Iran have a history of military cooperation that includes Iran sending drones to Russia in recent years. In separate remarks, Zelensky said Russia is providing military intelligence to Iran. Greg Myrie, NPR News, Kyiv.
It's 100 days until the midterm elections, and NPR's Mara Liasson has more on where things stand for both parties.
Republicans are facing strong headwinds. President Trump's approval rating is under 40%, and voters are sour on the economy. The Iran war and Trump's tariffs are keeping prices up. But Republicans have some advantages, too. They've raised much more money than Democrats, and Republican gerrymanders have reduced the number of competitive House districts to less than 20. Democrats have the advantage of enthusiasm. Democratic voters have turned out in larger numbers than Republicans in primaries and special elections this year. To win the majority in the Senate, Democrats need a pickup of net 4 seats, and to win the House, they need 3 seats. Mara Eliason, NPR News.
The Federal Reserve is facing a big decision on interest rates this week. NPR's Rafael Nam has more.
The Fed is set to hold its latest policy meeting at a time of high uncertainty. Although investors for now believe policymakers will hold rates steady, many are betting the Fed may have to raise them this year if inflation picks up as expected. That's because the continued war with Iran has led to a spike in energy prices. We'll also get a first read of economic growth in the second quarter, which covers from April to June. And we have a slew of important tech earnings, including from Microsoft and Meta. Investors will also carefully eye the earnings of Chevron and ExxonMobil at a time of big volatility in the energy markets. Rafael Nam, NPR News.
And you're listening to NPR News from Washington. The Tour de France ended today with a Slovenian cyclist taking home his 5th title in the famous race that was shortened in the final stage. NPR's Chandelier Stuster has more.
Tadej Pogacar won his 5th Tour de France on Sunday, completing the race in just under 74 hours. He crossed the finish line of the final stage of the race just before 8 o'clock p.m. local time. Pogacar thanked his fans and supporters after the race. He also said the win feels incredible.
Yeah, 7 tours already and 7 times on podium. And 5 wins, it's something that you wouldn't even maybe write in a storybook.
The route for the Tour de France's final stage was changed and shortened this year. Security and police for the event were reassigned to assist with wildfires raging in the southwest portion of the country. Chandelier Stuster, NPR News.
At the weekend box office, The Odyssey took the top spot again, taking in an estimated $87 million in its second weekend. Globally, the film has made nearly $640 million. In second place, it was close with Disney's Moana taking in $10.5 million and Toy Story 5 in third place with $10 million. Toy Story has now surpassed $1 billion with $448 million domestically and $573 million globally. Rounding out the top 5, Minions and Monsters and Hadestown. U.S. futures contracts are trading higher at this hour. You're listening to NPR News from Washington.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Luminescence Foundation. Luminescence Foundation is dedicated to shedding light on neurological research focused on Alzheimer's and Parkinson's diseases and supporting land conservation initiatives. This is NPR.
Things you'll never hear on public radio. Rumors, innuendo, fake news. Contribute to the things you do hear on WRKF. Fair, honest, and tough reporting, and facts. Stand with the facts. Become a member or renew your membership today at WRKF.org.
The Baton Rouge Alliance for Students announces applications for Changemakers, a 10-month program building student advocates. Deadline July 31st and new cohort announcement August 12th. Application information at bralliance.org/changemakers.
Back in the 90s, in the Sports Center era, sports journalism was built on the highlight reel.
Here is the man that this crowd wants to see, Vince Carter, with his first stop. Let's go home! Let's go home, baby!
Athletes were larger-than-life figures whose greatness could be distilled into a dunk replayed on loop. And the job of the journalist was usually to amplify the myth, to celebrate the superhuman, to inspire awe.
Top 8, 2-2. Bases loaded for Sammy Sosa. Look out.
1-0 count, 2 down. Sosa waiting. Swung on! Deep grand slam home run! Sammy Sosa!
His 3rd grand slam in his last 34 home runs. He went 240.
The distance between the athlete and the audience was kind of the point. We didn't know much about who they were off the field, and we really didn't need to. The spectacle was enough. Then came the internet, though, and that distance, those myths, were shattered. Social media, podcasts, and 24/7 access now give us the whole person. Flawed, vulnerable, often really messy.
The people of Rio, they put on a great games, and my immature, intoxicated behavior tarnished that a little.
With the pedestal collapsed, storytellers, they need a new approach, one that looks past the viral clips to understand how athletes navigate the pressures of being human in public. It's not about tearing down idols, but about interrogating the systems that build them. In short, it's the perfect moment for this guy.
Welcome to Pablo Torre Finds Out. I am Pablo Torre.
I really do think Pablo Torre is often the smartest guy in the room, but he would never say that, and you also wouldn't know it based off his self-deprecating presence on camera. A Harvard grad, started by writing deeply reported features for Sports Illustrated, he quickly became a sharp, witty voice at ESPN, where he co-hosted Around the Horn, High Noon, and countless segments that blurred the line between journalism and cultural commentary. Now, with his own podcast, Pablo Torre Finds Out, he has built a hit that feels like a natural evolution of his career. A mix of plain curiosity, internet chaos, and big brain humor that turns every weird sports story into a mirror of all of us consuming it.
Do you think the greatest football coach of all time is deserving of a serious examination that will also make you uncomfortable when you see his man moves? These are the questions I present to modern journalism.
From WHYY and PRX, this is Sports in America. And today, we're going to mash up the sacred and the profane with one of the more unique voices in sports. We talk about his first memories of his beloved Yankee Stadium, how he uses the absurd to speak truth to power, and why he found himself on the porch of Bill Belichick's Airbnb. Wait till you hear that. I was really excited to talk to Pablo. We actually both spent time writing for Harvard Crimson in college, but our paths diverged there. Sometimes, I will admit, I'm a little envious of the kind of insights into our world and culture that Pablo has gained through the lens of sports. We'll hear about the times he felt he lost his way, how he developed his signature process, and why he thinks sports are more vital than ever to break through the noise in our divided country. Pablo, thanks for doing this.
David, good to talk to you, man. Happy to.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it. Can we start from the beginning? You grew up in New York, right?
Yes, in Manhattan. I'm a city kid, a thing that now sounds so much tougher when I say it as an adult than it felt at the time. I was naive. Are we here to talk Rudy Giuliani? Is that what we're doing here? David?
I mean, sure. I mean, if you want to bring up Giuliani, I'm here for it. I was more interested in your New York, but if you want to talk about Giuliani's New York.
Oh, well, I grew up in it. I mean, it was. I grew up in Murray Hill in Manhattan, which used to be a place where consultants did not go to vomit recreationally. Now it is exactly that. And first one in my family born in the United States, born and raised in New York City, parents from the Philippines, and my New York is that version of New York that I am ever nostalgic for. A place where everything felt comically diversified, the multicultural experiment in which the allegiance that I clung to most sincerely, tribally, was the New York Yankees. So that was me as a kid.
So you were a Yankees fan from birth?
I mean, all those trophies. How does one not get radicalized?
That's probably true. Yeah, Pittsburgh Pirates fans like me really appreciate that kind of chatter.
That's right.
So what's your first sports memory?
Oh wow, going to the Big East tournament.
Oh nice.
At Madison Square Garden. I remember I was looking at this the other day because my mom saves all of my stuff, which is horrifying. But as a matter of like a little notebook that I found when I used to just like write down statistics and rosters as if I was, on the bench, like as an assistant coach or something. And then the more conventional, like Christian memory is going up to the Ramsey Yankee Stadium and seeing the expanse of green and being intoxicated by the fact that, wait a minute, this is a thing that exists in real life. You never forget that. So those are the two things I think of.
So we share something else in common, which is going to the same college and writing for the same college newspaper, the Harvard Crimson. And I don't know, I have to say, like, I don't know the right words to use, but I feel like there was something about that place and writing and the craft of writing that made me who I am as a journalist in a lot of ways. And do you feel the same way?
The word you're looking for is insufferable.
That is accurate. Yeah, it's like
but
sleepless.
But so sincerely cosplaying the New York Times is the shorthand. Like a bunch of kids who were going to take this as seriously as anyone at Harvard was doing anything.
Yeah, you're talking to somebody who covered like the New Hampshire primary as a sophomore in college, but I felt like I can compete with the New York Times and the Washington Post. Like I'm from the Harvard Crimson, but it was laughable.
I remember I got press passes to go to like Celtics games. I was like, I was probably doing too much just as a matter of like, I deserve to be with the actual adults. But it's an extracurricular activity, of course, that became your main thing. I didn't do journalism before getting to college. In high school, I kind of wrote for the school paper, but didn't really mean anything. To me, apologies to the Owl, a fine institution in its own right at Regis High School. But the Crimson is where you realize there can be a pre-professionalism that attends all these meetings. And you see the coaching tree, as it were. I remember showing up and being like, oh, wow, this is not merely playing pretend New York Times. This is kind of a feeder system to real newspapers. I was assigned a story on the heavyweight crew team and the rowing team at Harvard. Again, I'm from New York City. Did not know what crew was. Had never seen those vessels on the Charles River. Only to discover that I was suddenly covering what is in my now editorial record, the greatest college rowing team of all time, apparently. The heavyweights at Harvard, who would dominate globally and filled various Olympic rosters, and also involved a memorable first interview for me, and I apologize to which one it is, but it was either Cameron or Tyler Winklevoss.
The Facebook guys?
The Facebook guys. Like, some of the first calls I made was to, I forget which one, but yes, one of the great rowers in college rowing history is that pair of identical 6'7"-ish, or whatever it is, Olympians.
Who would eventually get screwed by Mark Zuckerberg, but like you didn't know that when you were interviewing him about crew. All right, a little context here. The Winklevoss twins, famously portrayed in the movie The Social Network, were those twin brothers who sued Mark Zuckerberg, claiming they had come up with the idea for Facebook. They also happened to row crew at Harvard.
Oh, I was just comparing them to various members of the, NBA draft. All I could do was just like, in terms of like the bad writing I was doing, it would be like, remember that draft where like Allen Iverson and Kevin Garnett and Steve Nash and all those guys went in the same year? That's what this crew team is. And I tried to just like translate it into my sports fan language, and going back, I cringe so hard my body turns inside out, because I'm comparing Allen Iverson to the Winklevi, which is a thing I think literally no one should ever do. And
well, maybe they were the Allen Iversons of crew. Like, I mean, that was, you're right, it was a big deal.
I do think they loved the dress code, though. I think they definitely loved the regalia. I was doing, again, like crew, field hockey, wrestling, women's ice hockey, a bunch of sports, the first two especially, field hockey.
But also you were feeling pressure to go to law school, right?
Yes. Turns out that my career...
I just brought up a difficult memory. Some of you can probably relate to this. Pablo's parents had high expectations of him in college, urging him to use his education towards a bankable career, maybe as a doctor or a lawyer. Pablo was torn between pursuing that kind of stable life and following his mischievous muse.
Well, mom and dad covering field hockey does not necessarily resemble the dream they had for me when they came to this country. And my parents are physicians. They came from the Philippines. They worked at NYU Hospital. My dad worked at VA and Bellevue Hospital in Manhattan for 40 years in the end. And so the thing I came into college aspiring to do pre-professionally was go to law school, because, David, that's what you do when you're a person who is, quote-unquote, interested in the humanities, but also, quote-unquote, wants to make money.
Right.
And so I was in the debate team in high school, and this was always kind of like the path I was going to follow of respectability and predictability and structure as opposed to whimsy and chaos and field hockey.
But then you took the LSAT, right?
Yeah. So, it wasn't diagnosed as a panic attack at the time. It certainly feels that way when I think about it in retrospect. If you came to visit me in a library, which is where I was the summer before I took the LSAT, my junior year, you could have presented me with a genie in a lamp and I would have used one of the wishes on like a perfect LSAT score.
Yeah.
It was that level of myopia and short-sightedness around what was really important. Spoiler alert, but that's how much I cared about it. Effectively had a panic attack. Resolved to take the LSAT again, and did a second time, but in between realized I should probably take like a gap year because this isn't going great for me. But I was supposed to be a lawyer and, do important things. That would be my aspiration, yeah.
Okay, this is my moment of full disclosure. This is where our paths diverge, and I think you made the wise decision. I mean, I went on to be a news journalist and cover politics and hosted Morning Edition at NPR and had a great few decades. Totally had a great few decades, but I look at people like you, I look at like your friend Mina Kimes and what you're doing now in the sports world. Like I am a diehard sports fan who's like, God, I wish I could have applied whatever the hell these skills are to sports, and you've done it so masterfully. And there's some envy there. I have to admit, there's some envy. So whatever choices you made after having the panic attack in law school, you did the right thing.
But the reason why I so appreciate that is that now in my retelling of this, I can opt in to having more of a risk-seeking bravery. Yeah. Really, it's because I bombed a test. Failure, in my view, is what shunted me into a pathway towards what I can only describe as an unexpected passion project and subsequently quality of life that I did not want. That wasn't one of the wishes I used in my hypothetical genie story. I never would have thought that. And because it didn't go great, I was forced to be creative and actually ask myself for a year, and it's just a year, what do I want to do? And I chose to be a fact checker at Sports Illustrated, and chose to apply for, having been, for fun again, an intern writing articles for the website one summer, that I thought was just like the stuff I did for fun, because the Crimson was a thing that I cared about deeply, but never gave myself the permission to consider as like a real full-time job. Like I was always like, look, the thing about what I see behind your right ear, that terrible towel, so much sweat. I sweated so much about like what am I doing here? I was constantly like Patrick Ewing, Big East level sweat. Like I was not confident in what this path was going to be. And now, in retrospect, I thank God every day that I bombed the LSAT.
Yes, fate had intervened and sent Pablo down a different path the day he failed the LSAT. Coming up, we will hear about his early days scrapping for stories at Sports Illustrated.
This is 89.3 WRKF, Baton Rouge Public Radio. Listen on your phone and read the latest news with the WRKF app, available for Apple or Android.
Support for WRKF provided by our members and by the Charles Lamar Family Foundation, focused on K-12 education, companion animal welfare, and water resources. The grant application deadline for its next round is September 15th. LamarFamilyFoundation.org.
In Maine, Democrats have been scrambling to select a new Senate nominee ever since former candidate Graham Plattner announced he was withdrawing.
We are committed to a process that delivers a nominee who will achieve our common goal, replace Susan Collins with a true champion of our rights.
That story on the next Morning Edition from NPR News.
Monday morning on 89.3 WRKF Baton Rouge.
Welcome back to Sports in America. I'm David Green. When Pablo Torre left college, his half-baked plan to become a lawyer in disarray, he got a shot with an entry-level position at one of the world's most important sports publications. So talk me out of the gap year. Like, you get into Sports Illustrated, and what is one moment where you felt that? Like, at least started to feel it, like, God, I'm really happy I didn't go that law school route, writing about sports, covering sports. This is the world I want to be in.
So one of the first stories I successfully pitched at Sports Illustrated, and again, I was, to use the word, insufferable, I must imagine, as like a young reporter who's in these meetings, like, I'm here to check facts, I'm also here to pitch stories and like write. It's really what I wanted to figure out if I could do. And immediately I pitched a story on Manny Pacquiao, so parent from the Philippines, of course, so I had some insight into his character, and I mean that as a character, like this very impressive Filipino boxer who was climbing weight classes and came from poverty and was now this wildly exciting boxer who had a nickname which is ridiculous but was very boxing. His nickname was the Mexicutioner because he would defeat the great fighters from Mexico, all of whom, by the way, through line of violence, are known for just all-out offense.
The winner by knockout victory, he is the new WBC Super Featherweight International Champion, Manny Pacquiao.
So the entertainment value of Pacquiao was also part of his appeal. It was just like he's so fun to watch. He does not seem to care about defense so much. And so he goes up against great Mexican fighters, and that's part of his legend building. But he's Filipino. And so I pitched this story, and I go, and let me tell you, man, when your friends are one else at very respectable law schools that you once fetishized, and you meet up for like dinner one weekend, and you're trading stories about what it was like for you that week, and they come back with torts, and I come back with I was embedded with a boxer in training camp, and I'm basically living my version of Almost Famous, where I'm like embedded in this entourage, and I'm seeing this it's boxing, man. It's the sport where, as money has flooded into sports, boxing has always felt this compulsive need to sell itself, which means just let whoever come on in.
Yeah, well put.
Whatever you want to write about, you want to see us do whatever, stick around. They're just there to promote.
The violence, the characters, the crowd,
the parties,
scene, Vegas, the parties.
Yes, Vegas being the vector, Vegas being the place where these things happen. So I was telling stories about that, and I'm like, okay, wait a minute. From a pure just like story for story thing, I feel like I'm onto something. This is, at the very least, is more fun to talk about, and my friends seem to be jealous of what I get to do while they're like, again, still studying for stuff. And that was a big torts, man, torts.
Okay, so you make your way to ESPN, and you actually start getting on television. Like, pardon the interruption. What is the reaction you're getting from ESPN audiences? Is a young, smart journalist who's suddenly popping up?
Pablo Bernard Cison, those are his real middle names. Torres.
I am the third as well, Jason. Thank you very much.
Wait a minute, what's this counterfeit stat boy? Give us a real stat boy.
I'm trying my best here. Bears, Jaguars, Panthers, Bortles.
Why is this Chinese man with a Mexican name on television was a big bit of feedback on the internet.
Did a walk-off homer in the 13th inning. Woo. Back to you at the adults table.
Yes, the adult table. Nice job, kid. Big thing.
People didn't quite know what a Filipino is, which was very funny to me because they're kind of accidentally reverse engineering colonialism in that very kind of intuitive question. Why is there a Spanish thing with this Asian guy? Well, I have questions and answers for you if you want to continue the conversation. But it was also the thing of, I remember being at a party, and this is very early on in my career at ESPN, and I had just gotten hired, and I said, I'm just starting work at ESPN. And ESPN hired me in 2012, in October of 2012. And the response from a friend of a friend at this barbecue was, to do tech support? Like, not, but like totally guilelessly, like not trying to shame me.
Yeah.
Just like earnestly being like, Oh, obviously, right. So you're like working on the technology, the IT stuff.
God.
And I'm just like, not
exactly.
Not exactly. So there was just some of the ESPN being inside of the television, which I also watched growing up, of course, as sports fans do, especially in our era, the cable television era.
I remember that.
It was. God, I miss it. Despite all the stories I'm currently telling, I miss it vehemently. It's a bunch of people that made me realize that whatever I am is also an avatar for something else. And so that was immediately just like, oh wait, I'm something they haven't necessarily seen before, for reasons that are sad, but also are an opportunity in terms of people might remember this guy they saw that one time, and they might, ask follow-up questions, which I found useful.
What were you looking for at that point, like in terms of personal fulfillment?
I think I was looking to make money. I remember coming from the world of writing and not realizing that TV people made so much more money.
Hard truth.
That was kind of mind-blowing. And again, I miss the cable television bundle, David. I miss it. But no,
I'm with you.
So there was just like, I got a sense of just like how the media economy actually functioned at that time, and that was very crazy to me. But then, in a more substantive way, what I was trying to do was prove that I could be a voice that mattered. I'm sort of like the job I had at ESPN from the start was basically like, hey, can you fill in on every possible show when someone's on vacation? I sort of gradually earned the trust to be a fill-in. I kind of got a PhD I was there full-time for a dozen plus years. I kind of got a PhD in substitute hosting.
But then you land in your own thing. I mean, and I remember when you became host of ESPN Daily, and again, another moment of envy because I'm sitting there covering news every morning. But that felt like, I mean, based on everything you're saying, like sort of the dream job.
I didn't see it in those terms at the beginning. So what happened was I was co-hosting a show called High Noon on television that existed for 2 years, and the show got canceled. And simultaneously, because the universe works in mysterious ways, my friend Mina Kimes, who you mentioned before, she was transitioning to be a full-time NFL analyst. She had previously been hosting ESPN Daily, which was ESPN's, spoiler alert, answer to The Daily at the New York Times. And I came in like grateful to have a job, a full-time job again.
So Pablo began to gather these tricks he'd learned along the way, turning a bit of phrase, being playful without causing harm as a host, combining spontaneity with deep research into a viral podcast that has come to compete with the biggest shows in sports. All of this entirely on his own terms.
I haven't even seen Pablo yet. It's like a reveal. It's like I get, like, what's he wearing?
He's gonna be in a ball gown.
There he is, Miss America.
Welcome to Pablo Torre Finds Out. I am Pablo Torre, and today we're gonna find out what this sound is.
If I'm wrong on this and you're right, then Steve is not as smart as I think he is.
Can I give you my political platform for how to solve the internet?
Yep.
I think we should all go back to 56 kbps modems.
Yeah.
That, when a JPEG really meant something, when it unfurled like a tapestry on your computer screen.
Yeah.
Then you break out and you're doing your own thing now. Pablo Torre Finds Out, which really just, lets you follow your curiosity, and it's an amazing show. But I guess before we dive in, like what were you missing on that ESPN show? Like, you spent a lot of time talking to other journalists, designing, as you described it, like this beautiful approach with conversation and scoring and tape. And I feel like sports is the perfect place for that kind of approach because the stories are so rich. But what was missing? What weren't you getting?
Yeah, so just briefly mentioned it, like why is sports great for this? Is because, and I think about this all the time in sports, like the stakes are almost immediately persuasive.
Yeah.
Sort of like the drama, like the question of like when you score something, it's like, well, it's going to feel like too much. If you buy that the people care about this as a matter of like almost life and death, the stakes for all of these stories can sort of exist at a higher level of urgency.
Yeah.
Which is why I kind of love the drama of sports intuitively.
But like NFL films, they could be covering some like meaningless game between 2, 3, and 11 teams late in the season, and I would just be like crying, like literally crying about some 3rd and 13 play because the music is underneath it. The
and
voice.
The narration, John Fazenda, just like, the autumn wind is a raider, just like all that, just like, oh my God, like.
The game is Roger Staubach, an officer and a gentleman, saying goodbye to the team he loved.
Yes, that's cinematic. It had an obviously cinematic aspect. But what I wasn't getting to do was direct the film. When you're around so much reporting, I think the instinct becomes, I want to do some of this myself. And so I would occasionally do episodes. I'd squeeze in episodes where, like, I'm going to do the interviews, but they were so few and far between, and invariably my favorite ones to do, which speaks to, again, some solipsism, I'm sure, but also just this desire to, like, really get my hands into every part of this, because that was, I think, just very, very energizing.
We used to have a line at Morning Edition, which an executive producer used, which was, we're all about wonk and whimsy, which I loved. And I feel like that's the same sort of ethos. But why is that important? I mean, the combination of serious and stupidity.
So coming from sports and coming from my sort of like habituation to sports talk, in which I'm coming in as like effectively the nerd, the young Sheldon of ESPN is the most self-loathing insecurity that I had when I was 22. You sort of need to establish your credibility that you're here to have fun. You're here to entertain. Like, you're not here to be the turd in the punch bowl. You're not here to just serve broccoli to people. That's a dangerous niche to have in sports, which is, of course, the toy department, which is why you, David, of course, never dared to fully commit to it. Ever. It's because it's for children. And so, allegedly. And so, to me, like, part of what this show is supposed to be is, wonk and whimsy. I think it's exactly what I think I am going for here. And really, it's to melt the cheese on your broccoli. I'm still going to do the substance. Right, I'm going to hopefully... You're getting some nutrition, man. I can't help that part. That's just what there's a wonk that is going to really unapologetically reveal itself to you. But if you can, by that point, be so, surprised by how fun it also is, then now I'm sort of scratching all the parts of my cortex, like I'm lighting up all these parts as opposed to just like trying to be one thing or the other.
As Pablo's presence grew in the media landscape, he began to take bigger, more thought-provoking swings. In 2009, he explored why pro athletes often fall into financial peril. In 2024, he profiled inmates on death row who were rooting for the Cowboys with their final words. He's found his groove, holding the most wealthy and powerful figures in sports to account. No more so than with his latest reporting. It involves LA Clippers owner and former Microsoft CEO Steve Ballmer, NBA superstar Kawhi Leonard, and a startup that's called Aspiration. Let me make this as simple as possible. So Pablo discovered that Ballmer, the owner, invested heavily in Aspiration, which had been struggling. Then that company paid Kawhi Leonard, the basketball player, $28 million. But no one can find out what Leonard did for this company. No appearances, no ads, no social posts, nothing. So it appears Ballmer was paying his star player under the table, circumventing NBA salary cap rules and breaking labor law. Now, because of Pablo's reporting, the league has initiated its own high-profile investigation. You have now established yourself as one of, if not, the most influential investigative journalist in the sports world recently. I think about your LA Clippers stories and, reporting that they used an endorsement arrangement to circumvent the salary cap in the NBA. You're dealing with, one of the richest men on earth, and Steve Ballmer, the owner. And
Harvard guy, David.
Harvard guy, Kawhi Leonard, one of the biggest stars in the NBA right now, and you take them on, and you expose something important that the NBA is now investigating. What's the role in telling such really important, groundbreaking stories.
I appreciate you framing it that way. This is a story fundamentally that on paper can seem like just broccoli. It's a company that was founded by some Harvard nerds that was fighting climate change. That's the story of aspiration. The company that signed Kawhi Leonard to the no-show deal that was in totality this $28 million no-show endorsement contract plus a $20 million equity deal. So $48 billion in totality. On the other side, there is a former CEO of Microsoft who comes in wanting to do things as precisely as measure the distances between the toilets in the new building he's created. There is wonk all over his approach to how he wants to run the LA Clippers. There is Kawhi Leonard and the cardinal sin that has allegedly, according to my reporting, been broken. Salary cap circumvention, which is a rule in a collective bargaining agreement, a function of labor law, in which in a 500-page document there's a very important section in which you can't pay your athletes more than has been agreed upon as a matter of your players' union and your league. And so you go down the rabbit hole on that, and it's just a series of extreme characters behaving in ways that, again, are quite cinematic and I think persuasively obsessive. Like they really care. And if you convey that care as well as that incompetence, it's like, well, there's a little Coen Brothers in that.
Yeah.
There's a little, pick your favorite, like, part, highbrow farce is kind of how I think about it sometimes. And I love that.
But who are you, like, I think about the great investigative journalists who would talk about like who they're fighting for and what they're fighting for. It's like, you're exposing corruption. You're exposing corruption in politics. At the end of the day, you're fighting for people who are taken advantage of, the voiceless. Like when it comes to investigative work in sports, like who do you think about? Who are you doing this for?
I think about the public interest. And that is a loaded term that we can spend 3 hours also debating. But my view is that sports are important. And it's not just because I want to justify it to my parents, although there is some of that. It's also because it's just one of the few cultural institutions that people care about anymore. And certainly one of the few institutions, if the only one, in which people from different political perspectives will gather to root for the Steelers or for the Yankees. They may not listen to the same music or vote the same way or exist in the same geographic location or be of the same age or economic strata, but they might care about sports. And so to me, sports as the giant town hall that might be the only town hall we really plausibly have left where people are going to gather with those they disagree, it ends up being a place where you can really get to the bottom of some of those vegetables. And the public interest here, I mean, it's interesting. I'm always trying to calibrate, like, how much do I want to make this a case based on the vegetables versus just the unapologetic, I do this because I think it's entertaining. I think part of me just wants to do the second thing and just say, I do this, I investigate stories because I think they're really worthwhile stories, period. But the more I think about sports as it fits into American culture, I mean, frankly, the Kawhi Leonard story has been this case study in a way in which one of the richest men on the planet, the richest owner in all of sports in the world, may plausibly be held to some account in a way that he cannot be, frankly, in the rest of American life, in the life that he leads. Somehow, this stupid non-law that is a real cardinal rule in sports about salary cap circumvention brings a scrutiny to a 150 billionaire that actually provides an accountability that he does not have to feel otherwise. And the reason he feels it is because sports are important to him and because he knows how much more popular sports is broadly to the public and the public interest than even Microsoft was.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. I mean, and again, some of this we can wish for people to care more about, frankly, the down the middle, straight political stories that are actually unambiguously important and civically relevant. If I have to come through the toy department, though, to make it feel like maybe there's something resembling accountability for the richest people on our planet who have all gravitated to sports for the reasons that also are explaining why we're in this point in time, I just think that's a unique vantage point that I don't want to surrender.
As Pablo has developed his own show, the stories he has chosen to follow have taken some unexpected turns. We'll hear about one of the wildest ones yet coming up on Sports in America.
This is NPR for the capital city, 89.3 WRKF, Baton Rouge Public Radio. Learn how listener support delivers NPR news to South Louisiana at WRKF.org.
Support for WRKF provided by our members and by the Baton Rouge Clinic. Hot days mean more time at the pool. Studies show that drowning is responsible for more deaths among 1 to 4-year-olds than any other causes except birth defects. Tips on water safety at BatonRougeClinic.com.
What in a society should we do with the people who have committed the most horrific, heinous crimes? To some, there is only one answer that gives victims the justice they deserve, and that is death. But these days, our country is split on the death penalty, with half in favor and half against. So, should the rule be an eye for an eye? I'm John Donvan. This week on Open to Debate, should we abolish the death penalty?
This evening at 7 on 89.3 WRKF.
Pablo Torre has a knack for finding leads that combine salacious details with larger-than-life characters. He has a fearlessness when it comes to calling out the questionable decisions of some of the biggest personalities in sports, which is how he found himself on the porch of Bill Belichick's Airbnb. Can we finish by talking about a reporting trip that you did to Winthrop, Massachusetts? So I was pleased. Bill Belichick, as we all know, football coach at the University of North Carolina, and he won like maybe a Super Bowl or two for the New England Patriots.
But who's counting?
Yeah, not me. They still don't have more than the Steelers, but anyway. So he's caught on a Ring camera that the world sees, shirtless, which is highly disturbing. Like top on the list of things I never wanted to see in my life. But he was there with a woman, leaving at like 6 in the morning without a shirt on and carrying like a man purse.
A merce.
Okay, a little bit of context here. Some, not me because go Steelers, but some would call Bill Belichick the greatest coach in NFL history. He's got 8 Super Bowl rings, 2 with the New York Giants, 6 with the New England Patriots, and he was famous for his gruff, terse dynamic with the media. He would answer long questions with just 2 or 3 words. He was not friendly. He was fiercely private. He never smiled. And yet, as a flashpoint in the internet age, he found himself in the middle of one of the most tabloidy stories we have ever seen in sports. He was caught shirtless on a mystery Ring camera video. Yes, a football legend with a walk of shame for the ages. It was a story made in a lab for Pablo Torre to investigate. Fill in the blanks for me. What did we all see that horrified so many of us?
We saw in miniature a vast, absurd story that I have been investigating, in which we are getting the most shockingly personal view of the most deliberately impersonal man to straddle the most important sport in America. So Bill Belichick, look, man, some of it's just like, again, in sports you can really think of archetypes. And we are helped by the fact that Belichick, as you as a Steeler fan knows, he was America's withholding father. He was the guy who didn't want to ever tell you, good job. He was the guy who actually said, do your job, as a matter of his personal...
And quietly cheat a lot, but...
And absolutely, engineer vast spy operations.
Right.
As well as football deflation operations, one might allege. But his whole thing was, I'm going to be, and he was, the greatest football coach of all time. And the way he did it was through this unbelievable discipline, discretion, privacy, and aggressive boringness.
Right.
Him at a press conference was oh my God, incomparably painful.
Well, it seemed your team rallied around your quarterback to some extent. To drop down to number 3 on the depth chart at the most important position and still beat a good, well-coached team that decisively, what does that say about just where your team is right now, just how good it is right now?
I don't know.
To the point of almost fetishistic. At a certain point, the press was sort of they knew what they were going to get, and the question was, could you enjoy it? And over time,
he was enjoying it. I think he loved being that
power.
Sure,
power.
Yeah,
to be that powerful and untouchable, despite all the things that you just alluded to, is a rare thing. He is the best coach, the greatest defensive mind in American football history. Is a fair biography to give him. And so when this same guy pops up, Zoftig, shirtless, bountiful, in terms of the invasive view.
I don't want to think of him as bountiful. But please.
But you know it to be true, David.
Yes. And dating Jordan Hudson, who's a woman far below his age.
And look, speaking of kinks, I'm not here to yuck Bill Belichick's yum. He's a free-thinking adult man, and Jordan Hudson, who is now 24 at last check. This is maybe a 50-year or so age gap, give or take.
Who's judging? Nobody.
Vaya con Dios. But as some on Twitter would accuse me of thinking in my Spanish-speaking brain, I would simply say that Bill Belichick and Jordan Hudson, what they resemble is one of the great character developments in American life. Bill Belichick went from the guy we just talked about to this guy who wanted to be a podcaster, appear in media, a guy who was suddenly here on Instagram doing yoga poses with Jordan Hudson, his girlfriend. He was dressed as a fisherman, catching her on his rod, and she was a mermaid. I can't overstate how unlike this was to the old Bill Belichick. And simultaneous to this, the last bit of texture, I guess, is, and there's so much available, is just that he became the head coach of the University of North Carolina. He became the highest paid public employee in the state of North Carolina. And he becomes a college coach, and wouldn't you know it, this girlfriend, who is not merely a girlfriend, but the acting, not just COO of this production company that they made together.
Yeah, so Jordan Hudson was in college when she met Bill Belichick on a plane. They were sitting next to each other, and then he became her boyfriend, nearly 50 years her senior. She became Belichick's right-hand woman and self-styled publicist. Jordan started showing up everywhere Belichick did. Major media interviews, on the field, at Tar Heel football practice, even in a Super Bowl ad at the coach's insistence. Pablo felt like sports fans just had a right to know what the hell was going on. Some of what you're saying, that's the broccoli. He's still coaching at a major college program. I mean, there's money being exchanged, contracts being signed, getting his girlfriend into Super Bowl ads. If you're a North Carolina football fan, if you're a New England Patriots fan, if you're just a football fan, if you're just a sports fan, this guy's been important for years, and it's we deserve to know the truth.
Do you think the greatest football coach of all time is deserving of a serious examination that will also make you uncomfortable when you see his man boobs? These are the questions I present to modern journalism.
You rented the Airbnb where the two of them were staying. What was? Yeah. Tell me why that was an important component of your reporting on the life of Bill Belichick.
Yeah. So it's the ring cam video for I'm lost in the sauce sometimes. Thank you for bringing me back to right.
No, I wasn't going to let you go without bringing up the fact that you rented the Airbnb that Bill Belichick stayed in.
So the reporting around what is this ring camera video? I mean, really it came to the fore because on Netflix Live, in the roast of Tom Brady, at the end of the roast, Tom Brady gets to go behind the dais, go behind the podium on the dais, and he gets to hit back at everybody. And Belichick's on stage, along with the rest of the New England Patriots and many comedians and various other dignitaries of culture. And Tom Brady says,
everybody asks me which ring is my favorite. I used to say the next one. But now that I'm retired, my favorite ring is the camera that caught Coach Belichick slinking out of that poor girl's house at 6 a.m. a few months ago.
And I'm like, well, okay. Wow. So like this is in front of millions of people with Belichick on stage, and he's kind of like uncomfortably laughing, ha ha ha. And then I look up just the reporting around this, and the reporting had been, this is Bill Belichick leaving Jordan Hudson's house. And
investigative journalist in you has been activated.
I'm a fact checker. I'm nothing if not a fact checker. And I'm like, really? Because, by the way, if I can find where that house is, maybe there are just other bits of context surrounding this whole story. Like, that's a development. Belichick was staying there when? This was happening in 2023? Let me just, like, make sure I'm not missing anything. And the more I look into it, the more it becomes clear that it's not Jordan Hudson's house. I mean, it's just one of those stories, man, where, like, the follow-up question as I'm standing on the porch with the Ring camera on it is, who's on the other side of that Ring cam? And down the stairs come the owners of the Airbnb, who agree to talk to me without showing their faces, so it's just tape. And we don't name them, and we're careful to protect their identity otherwise. But what is so undeniable is the deep Boston accent, and the fact that the husband in this pair is a Patriots fan.
Amazing.
And to hear his point of view, like one day this 20-something young woman shows up, and under cover of darkness, suddenly she is joined by some man that they don't really know and can't make out because it's dark. And then in the pre-dawn hours of the following morning, out of their home, they live above this. They live on the top floor. Out from beneath them wanders a shirtless Bill Belichick. It is just one of the funniest mental images I think a person can have.
It really is. Last question. What story are you most excited to tell and apply this wonderful approach to now?
Gosh, you know, one of the struggles when I launched PTFO was, are we going to have enough stories? Are we going to... People were asking, like, are you going to run out of stuff to find out about? And the joy of doing this has been, the more stuff that I find out, the more people want to tell me about stuff they think I should find out. And so I want to get to some other stuff. I really do have, like, again, now that I'm in control of my docket, in the way that I couldn't be at ESPN, I have so many long-range projects that are box checking in the way that you put it before. The very thing I just said earlier, I thanked God for, that I have a job that allows me to do stuff like this. And now I'm again being confronted with the question of, how much do you really want to be thinking about a story that is both serious but also phenomenally stupid. And my mileage may evolve, but I'm here for it in the meantime.
Well, I am too. I love broccoli with cheese, I'm not going to lie. Big fan.
My daughter, my 5-year-old has been the focus group for that metaphor, so I'm glad it's resonating.
I love it. It resonates. Pablo, this was really fun. I really appreciate it.
David, anytime you want to contemplate the life that you could have led, just know that it's pretty weird, man. It's pretty weird.
Next time on Sports in America, we sit down with third-generation professional wrestler Natty Neidhart to talk about her new memoir, The Last Heart Beating. She's part of the legendary Hart family that produced greats like Bret and Owen Hart. She is also the first woman in her family to make a career of wrestling.
He didn't want his daughters to do it or his granddaughters to do it because he knew firsthand that it's a tough world.
We find out how Natty made her way onto the mat, and we ask the question: if the result of a contest is predetermined, do we still call it a sport?
My grandfather would roll over in his grave if he heard me tell you that it was not real.
That is coming up next week on Sports in America. This is Sports in America. I'm your host, David Green. Our executive producers are Joan Isabella and Tom Gressler. Our senior producer is Michael Olcott. Our producer is Michaela Winberg. And our associate producer is Bibiana Correa. Our engineer is Mike Villers. Our theme music is composed by Emma Bunker. Our talent booker is Britt Kahn. Our tile artwork was created by B. Walling. Sports in America is a production of WHYY in Philadelphia and is distributed by PRX. Some of our interviews were originally created by Religion of Sports, with special thanks to Adam Schlossman. You can find Sports in America on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, the iHeartRadio app, wherever you get your podcasts. And we also want to hear from you. How about you drop us a line? You can write us at sportsinamerica@whyy.org. That's sportsinamerica@whyy.org. Thanks, everyone, and we will see you next time for Sports in America.
This is member-supported 89.3 WRKF, Baton Rouge Public Radio. Learn about membership and business sponsorship at WRKF.org. Look under support.
High pressure is parked in the southern plains and also out over the Gulf, so we get that warm and humid air flowing in. Another heat advisory will be in effect on Monday. Mid-70s and clear for the overnight hours. We're in the mid-90s for the afternoon high on Monday. Looks like we'll stay sunny and very humid, the heat index at about 110. Upper 70s for the low and clear on Monday night. Then we get upper 90s again on Tuesday and Wednesday. This is WRKF meteorologist Steve Hamilton.
Support for WRKF provided by our members and by the Charles Lamar Family Foundation, focused on K-12 education, companion animal welfare, and water resources. The grant application deadline for its next round is September 15th. LamarFamilyFoundation.org.
We've just marked 1 year since Congress voted to eliminate federal funding for public media. NPR and this station remain committed to informing the public, but a free press doesn't just happen. It's something we need to protect. Without federal funding, we are relying on your support now. Don't wait. Make your gift before the end of the month. And thanks so much.
Support NPR programming in Baton Rouge at WRKF.org. Click the donate button to find out more.
What in our society should we do with the people who have committed the most horrific, heinous crimes? For some, there is only one answer that can truly give victims justice, and that is death.
For some crimes, any lesser penalty is simply a travesty of justice.
I don't want to spend my life in prison. I'm not saying that that's not punishment. I'm saying that's not punishment enough for the worst of the worst of the worst.
Others want to do away with capital punishment once and for all.
We're here to talk about whether this policy actually advances public safety, and it doesn't.
You cannot anymore kid yourself on the fact that innocents have been executed due to junk forensic science, prosecutorial misconduct, law enforcement misconduct.
I'm John Donvan. Coming up next on Open to Debate, should we abolish the death penalty? That's right after the news. Stay with us.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Janine Hurst. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is heading to the U.S. tomorrow to meet with President Trump and talk about the war in Iran. There's been a pause in the last 2 days in American strikes on Iran, but Israel has indicated it's willing to join the U.S. fight if military actions escalate. NPR's Emily Fang reports.
Netanyahu convened a cabinet meeting before departing for the U.S., where he'll attend the funeral of the late Senator Lindsey Graham, who was staunchly pro-Israel. And then Netanyahu will meet Trump on Tuesday. Iran's military spokesperson said Tehran believes Israel is trying to push the U.S. to expand attacks on Iran. In an Israeli poll last month, more than 90% of Israelis said they believed the now abandoned ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran favored Iranian interests. In addition to Iran, Netanyahu is concerned about a nuclear energy agreement the U.S. just signed with Saudi Arabia, something Israel has long opposed because they fear the kingdom may one day try to develop a nuclear weapon. Emily Fang, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
A person suspected of driving a vehicle into a crowd at a pride event in Germany has died. NPR's Shondelise Duster has more.
Berlin police say a suspect who drove into a crowd celebrating LGBTQ rights and attacked people with a machete was killed in a car
confrontation with authorities. The suspect, who German officials identified as 21-year-old Abdul Balut, was found in a Berlin suburb on Saturday. Berlin police say they fired on Balut after he ran toward officers with a bladed weapon. He died at the scene. Police say Balut had come to the attention of authorities in the past because of numerous previous crimes, but did not give additional details. At least one person is dead from the attack, and several people are injured. Chandelice Duster, NPR News.
Dozens of wildfires are burning across the Pacific Northwest, forcing thousands to evacuate and stretching limited firefighting resources. From Member Station Oregon Public Broadcasting, Joni Otten-Land has more.
Oregon had record low snowfall this past winter. That has led to several wildfires exploding across the region this past week. The Bench Fire erupted Saturday night and forced thousands to evacuate from the tribal community of Warm Springs. Jessica Newyear of the Oregon Department of Forestry says there aren't enough firefighters available on the ground.
We are definitely looking at fires and having to start prioritizing which ones are going to be staffed appropriately with how we want to staff each fire to try and help as best we can.
Parts of central and eastern Oregon are also experiencing dangerous air quality because of the wildfire smoke. For NPR News, I'm Joni Otten-Land in Portland, Oregon.
U.S. futures contracts are trading higher at this hour. Dow futures are up about 0.6%. NASDAQ futures up 1.5%. This is NPR News. Former Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez has returned to his country to face corruption charges. He had been extradited to the U.S. for drug trafficking, and he was sentenced to 45 years, but President Trump pardoned him. Hernandez led Honduras from 2014 to 2022 and was once a U.S. ally in the drug war, but he now faces charges in Honduras related to a case involving public funds. The 57-year-old will be arraigned next month, and he maintains his innocence. In its first 10 days in theaters, Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey has breezed past $500 million in ticket sales. NPR's Bob Mondello has more.
Perhaps appropriately for a tale of a mythical Greek hero who wandered the ancient world for decades, The Odyssey is proving to have what the film industry calls legs. Help me go home. Where most blockbusters drop by about 50% in their second weekend, this epic adventure is off by just 19%. It is expected to take in $87 million in North America and another $128 million overseas, which means that after zipping past $500 million in ticket sales on Friday, it will end this weekend with a 10-day total of almost $640 million worldwide. That's a faster box office pace than any previous Christopher Nolan film, including Oppenheimer and his Batman films, and it suggests The Odyssey will become the filmmaker's third film to top $1 billion in ticket sales. Bob Mondello, NPR News.
And I'm Janine Herbst, NPR News in Washington.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation, investing in creative thinkers and problem solvers who help people, communities, and the planet flourish. More information is available at hewlett.org.
Thanks to member support, you can rest easy knowing you're listening to a nonprofit service that is beholden to no one but you and your fellow listeners. Help keep it that way. Become a member or renew your membership today at WRKF.org. And thanks.
The East Baton Rouge Parish Library's 2026 Summer Reading Challenge, Plant a Seed, Read, runs through Saturday, August 15th, with programs for all ages across the library system. More information at ebrpl.com/summerreading.
In 1972, the Supreme Court ruled that the death penalty as practiced was arbitrary, cruel, and unusual, and therefore unconstitutional. For 4 years, it was outlawed, until another Supreme Court case issued guidelines for capital punishment, effectively lifting the moratorium and legalizing the death penalty once again. That second case was 50 years ago this year. In that half-century, 9,000 death row sentences have been passed down, 1,661 people have been executed in that time. This is open to debate. I'm John Donvan, and I'm telling you all this because in light of the anniversary, we're bringing you our debate from 2015 on whether it is time to abolish the death penalty. 23 states plus D.C. have done away with it. 4 more have executions paused. But that leaves another 23 states that retain the power to kill. These days, the American people are pretty much evenly split on whether to abolish the death penalty. 10 years ago, 6 in 10 Americans were still in favor. Hello, I'm John Donvan, and we have 4 superbly qualified debaters on stage who will be arguing 2 against 2, for and against this motion, abolish the death penalty. As always, our debate will go in 3 rounds, and then our live audience here in New York City votes to pick the winner, and only one side wins. The motion again, abolish the death penalty. Let's meet the team arguing for the motion, the team that wants to abolish. Please welcome Diane Rust Tierney. Diane, you are the executive director of the National Coalition to Abolish the Death Penalty. You have spent many years fighting the death penalty, back when you were working for the ACLU, back to the 90s. And as we pointed out, a majority of Americans still do support the death penalty, but the trend is definitely downward. So what has changed over time?
Well, I'd like to think I've gotten better at my job and have done a better job of getting the public to focus on the right questions.
And we'll be going to some of those questions tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome again Diane Rust Tierney. And Diane, tell us who your partner is.
My debate partner is the wonderful and absolutely brilliant Barry Scheck.
Ladies and gentlemen, Barry Scheck. Barry, you are a professor at the Cardozo School of Law, co-director of the Innocence Project, well known to television viewers by playing yourself on The Good Wife. You founded the Innocence Project back in 1992. How many post-conviction DNA exonerations have there been since the project began?
There are 362 post-conviction DNA exonerations, 19 of people off death row, many people that were convicted of murder in non-capital eligible states.
All right, and I'm assuming we're going to be hearing more about that in your argument. Let's again welcome the team arguing for the motion, abolish the death penalty. And we have 2 debaters arguing against the motion. Again, to be clear, they are against abolishing the death penalty, so you figured out the double negative there. It's pretty clear. First, let's please welcome Robert Blecker. Robert, you're a professor at New York Law School. You spent 12 years talking to prisoners inside Lorton Central Prison, another decade visiting death row prisoners. You put all of this together in a book called The Death of Punishment. And in it, you show that although you are a leading advocate of the death penalty, you have a surprising amount of empathy for some of the prisoners you met. I'm wondering, did that experience in any way soften your commitment to the death penalty?
Well, first of all, I spend a lot more time watching and listening than talking, but Darrell Holton, who murdered his 4 children, taught me a lot and made me laugh, and I do confess sometimes to missing him, but for the worst of the worst of the worst, not at all.
All right, and who is your partner?
My partner is the incredibly erudite and always sober Ken Scheidegger.
Please welcome Ken Scheidegger. Ken, since 1986, you've been legal director of the Criminal Justice Legal Foundation. In this field, you are a leading voice. You are probably the leading public advocate in support of the death penalty. We know that because your writings show up constantly in Supreme Court references. You're quoted constantly in the newspaper. In a recent profile, you said that you served in the Air Force and that your passion for military service and your support for the death penalty both come from the same core beliefs. What are those core beliefs?
Well, that basic belief is that in a civilized society, the most important function of government is to protect people from violent assault. And that is true whether the source of the threat be foreign or domestic.
Okay, thank you, Ken Scheidegger. And again, this is the team arguing against the motion, abolish the death penalty. So on to round 1. Our motion is this: abolish the death penalty. Round 1, opening statements by each debater in turn. And here to speak first in support of the motion, abolish the death penalty, Barry Scheck. He is co-founder and co-director of the Innocence Project and professor at the Cardozo School of Law.
Reasonable people can disagree about whether capital punishment is a morally appropriate sanction for the most heinous of crimes. And our opponents place tremendous value on retribution by execution. They think that is an incredible benefit. But I think when you reason about this as a public policy issue, and that's why we're here, and you look at the costs and benefits of having a death penalty versus life without parole in a maximum security prison, you're going to reach the same conclusion that 6 states have reached in the last 6 years. The death penalty doesn't work. It should be repealed and abolished. What are the costs? The death penalty creates an undeniable and unacceptable risk of executing innocents. The death penalty does not deter. The National Academy of Sciences recently reviewed all the studies and found no evidence of a deterrent effect. And common sense tells you that, because the states that execute the most, like Texas and Virginia, do not have lower homicide rates, do not have lower crime rates than the states that don't have a death penalty. The death penalty is administered arbitrarily. It depends on the quality of your representation, and who has money, and your race often determines what kind of representation you get. The death penalty also depends on where you're tried. It's incredibly arbitrary in this sense. It's only 2% of counties in the United States that are responsible for 56% of the death sentences and 52% of executions. Now, there should not be any disagreement about one moral and one factual question, and that is the unacceptable risk of executing innocent people. A young man in New Orleans, Mr. Stewart, Kia Stewart, was exonerated with the help of the prosecutors and the Innocence Project in New Orleans. He was tried for murder in New Orleans, represented by law students at Tulane Law School and a supervisor that had no experience in murder cases. This kind of stuff goes on all across the country, and we've got to face up to it. What is the error rate of convicting people that are innocent? Sam Gross at the University of Michigan Law School submitted a paper in the National Academy of Science proceedings and showed that when you look at capital convictions, you can demonstrate on innocence grounds a 4.1% error rate. Now, that is unbelievable. You cannot anymore kid yourself on the fact that innocents have been executed due to junk forensic science, prosecutorial misconduct, law enforcement misconduct, ineffective lawyers. Mark Earley, the Attorney General of Virginia, who presided and brought about 36 executions, has just come to the position as he left office that the death penalty is based on a false utopian premise. That false premise is that we have had and do have and will have 100% accuracy in death penalty convictions and executions. Who should live and who should die? I can no longer support the imposition of a penalty so final in nature, yet so fraught with failures. So, I leave this to you. Our friend George Will has said that conservatives, capital punishment is a government program, so skepticism is in order.
Thank you, Barry Scheck. And our motion is abolish the death penalty. And here to make his argument against the motion, please welcome to the lectern Ken Scheidegger. He is the legal director of the Criminal Justice Legal Foundation. Ladies and gentlemen, Ken Scheidegger.
Thank you. Why do we have the death penalty? There are 3 reasons. The first reason is that for some crimes, such as the marathon bombing, any lesser penalty is simply a travesty of justice. The second reason is incapacitation. An executed killer never kills again. We cannot say that for certain with a killer sentenced to life without parole. Life without parole is not a zero-risk option. If we choose life in prison for killers, we do risk killing innocent people. Then there is deterrence. It is a basic principle of human behavior that incentives matter. But if you raise the cost of doing anything, fewer people will choose to do that thing. Logically, then, you would think that an effective, enforced death penalty would save innocent lives through deterrence. And we should demand very convincing evidence by anyone who claims to the contrary. There are a number of empirical studies showing a deterrent effect, estimating between 5 and 18 innocent lives saved per execution. These studies have their critics, to be sure. The authors have responded to the critics and shown that the results still hold, even considering the criticism. The bottom line is we should not get rid of a penalty that is independently justified by justice if doing so risks taking innocent lives through lost deterrence. The arguments against the death penalty are like a game of whack-a-mole. Every time we refute one of the arguments, they just come up with another one. The old claim from the old days was that the death penalty was discriminatorily enforced against African-American defendants. That claim was uniformly refuted by study after study, including the defendant's own. Then they came to a backup claim that the death penalty was discriminatorily not imposed on murderers who kill black victims. The evidence there is more mixed. Then they fall back to the claim of excessive cost versus life without parole. The problem there is that the studies claiming that are seriously flawed. They typically include unnecessary costs as costs of the death penalty. In California, the study that was cited to claim the excessive cost of the death penalty counted as the number one cost of the death penalty the cost of keeping a person on death row for 26 years of appeals. Well, 3/4 of that cost is unnecessary. In a capital case where there is no doubt who did it, which is most capital cases, you can get it done in 6 years, which Virginia did with the DC sniper. There are a handful of cases, though, of people who were really innocent and who were really sentenced to death. But ask yourself, where would those people be if they had been sentenced to life without parole instead? In most cases, they would still be in prison, and they would never get out, because an inmate who is sentenced to death gets a government-paid lawyer for the second review of his case and the third review of his case, and that is where this evidence often comes out. Someone sentenced to life in prison, he may have longer time to prove innocence, but he doesn't have the resources. And so in most cases, nobody's going to care about his case. So the death penalty is an important part of our system. It's important for justice. Reforms are needed to make the process focus more on actual guilt and innocence. So let's mend it, not end it. And I ask you to vote no on this motion.
Thank you. That is 2 opening statements down, and we have 2 to go. But before that, we're taking a quick break. This is Open to Debate, and we'll be right back.
This is member-supported 89.3 WRKF, Baton Rouge Public Radio. Hear WRKF Classical 24 hours a day at classical.wrkf.org.
Support for WRKF provided by our members and by Walters Thomas Cullens LLC, where attorney Abood Thomas has handled catastrophic personal injury cases and industrial accidents for over 25 years. LAWBR.net, 12345 Perkins Road.
Connecticut's Democratic Senator Chris Murphy says the current version of capitalism isn't working for Americans.
I'm not a Democratic socialist, but I do believe that the Democratic Party has been historically way too timid in taking on corporate power.
But with major party disruption coming from his left, Senator Murphy joins us to talk about how he thinks Democrats can move forward. That's on the next On Point.
Monday morning at 10 on 89.3 WRKF Baton Rouge.
This is Open to Debate. I'm John Donvan. Today we're debating whether to abolish the death penalty. We've just heard opening statements from our first 2 debaters. We're about to hear some more. Let's get back to it. And a reminder of what's going on. We are halfway through the opening round of this debate. I'm John Donvan. We have 4 debaters, 2 against 2, arguing for and against this motion, abolish the death penalty. You have heard from the first 2 debaters, and now on to the third. Let's please welcome to the lectern Diane Rust Tierney. She is the Executive Director of the National Coalition to Abolish the Death Penalty.
The death penalty should be abolished because it fails to enhance public safety. We all want a criminal justice system that is effective and secure, one that creates more safety and less violence. But that is not what the death penalty is doing. In states where the death penalty is used, as you've already heard, we have a higher homicide rate. In the South, for example, which has the highest number of executions, there's the highest homicide rate. In the Northeast, by contrast, which has the lowest execution rate, we have a lower murder rate. These differences tell us that we have to take a closer look at what works and what doesn't, and take a common sense approach to public safety. Everyone wants a neighborhood that's safe and communities that are strong. And in order to do that, we have to focus on the root causes of crime. We know why crime and violence happens, but other things are neglected. Mental health services, safe and affordable housing, schools that prepare us for our future jobs, and jobs that pay living wages. When the nation's police chiefs were surveyed about what they thought our priorities should be when it comes to enhancing public safety, the death penalty ranked last consistently. What do police chiefs think should be our focus and attention? It should be on more resources for law enforcement, particularly training, drug treatment, and again, a stronger economy with better jobs. More evidence that the death penalty is disconnected from a true public safety objective is the fact that it's used so rarely. In 2014, we only had 72 new death sentences in the entire country. In 2013, we had 39 executions. In 2014, we had 35. 80% of the executions in 2014 took place in Texas, Missouri, and Florida. And even in those states that use the death penalty frequently, the death penalty is really relegated to pockets within those states. Abstract justifications for the death penalty have little meaning in a context where it's used so rarely and unpredictably. The death penalty does, however, reinforce our nation's sad and ugly history of slavery, Jim Crow segregation, and racial inequality. A substantial body of research spanning 40 years remarkably consistently shows that race, particularly race of the victim, is the single most reliable predictor of whether you're going to get a death sentence. The death penalty is rarely used when the victim is a person of color, particularly African American men, even though African American men are most likely to be the victims of homicide. We're also seeing in recent studies that the most likely person to receive a death sentence is an African American person who is convicted of killing a white victim. We have a system that treats some lives as worth more than others, and we have current information about how, as a society, we are two sets of people living in the same space with very different experiences with our interaction with law enforcement. Under those circumstances, we cannot have a system that decides who lives and who dies. The death penalty is an outdated practice that is hindering our nation's forward progress. Therefore, I urge you to vote for the motion to abolish the death penalty.
Thank you, Diane Ross Tierney. That is the motion, abolish the death penalty. And now our final debater to speak against this motion is Robert Blecker. He is professor at New York Law School and author of The Death of Punishment, Searching for Justice Among the Worst of the Worst. Ladies and gentlemen, Robert Blecker.
So let the punishment fit the crime. We've mouthed that for centuries. But do we believe it? Do we practice it? No, not at all. We mock it in the very administration of our criminal justice system. Because the grand irony is, however counterintuitive this is, that inside prison, it's nobody's job to punish. Life begins when the sentence of life begins. From the corrections point of view, it's all a clean slate, and it's nobody's job to punish. Look at the mission statements of the Departments of Corrections. They guide corrections. You will not find the word punishment in any mission statement in any Department of Corrections in the United States, or its synonyms. Not one. So it's no surprise that given the fact that no part of their mission is to punish, that they run their prisons in such a way that life becomes relatively pleasant. Now, what am I talking about? For one thing, you may not be sentenced to life without parole and end up in a maximum security prison. You're going to start out there, but you may not end up there. In many states that I have visited, a perfectly well-behaved killer, the most vicious of killers who prey on the vulnerable, will be perfectly compliant once they're arrested. So they will be pussycats, and they will be there for a long time. So they will be reliable, and therefore they will be given the best lifestyles, the best hustles inside the prison. The reality of life without parole, given the way the prison is administered, given the television sets, given the first-run movies in many cases, given recreation, given the hours and hours outside of the cell daily, the closest we come to serious punishment left in this society is the death penalty. So when you consider the motion, don't consider it in isolation. Consider the actual alternative in practice. And yet I would argue for the death penalty separately from that. Some people deserve to die, and we have the obligation to execute them. Now, who are they, and can we determine them adequately in advance? Yes, we can. We can do it through definition, and we can do it through enumeration. And so I would reserve the death penalty for, essentially, terrorists, mass murderers, murderers of vulnerable victims, especially children, rapist murderers, contract killers, torture killers. And so definitely we can, not precisely and fully define it in advance, but we can get to the core. Joshua Komisarjevsky broke into the Pettit house.
Go straight on.
Took Michaela and Haley, tied them to their beds in their upstairs bedroom for 6 hours. Took Michaela, repeatedly sexually abused her, took cell phone photos of her and sent them to the friends. And then, in order to eliminate the evidence before he left, took gasoline and doused her. on and around her and her sister and burnt them to death alive. He deserves to die. Danny Rawling, the ninja killer, broke into houses, tortured, mutilated, murdered. He deserved to die. Lawrence Brewer took an innocent black guy walking down the street, and for sport, this white supremacist dragged him to his death in unspeakable torture. We can enumerate them in advance. Not only who should we kill, how should we kill? Not by lethal injection, a terrible method. And not because it might cause pain, but because it certainly causes confusion. It confuses punishment with medicine. It's all part of the deeper issue. And so ultimately, we get to the question of why. Why should we punish? Not for the sake of deterrence. That would be using a person as a means to our own ends. That would be sending a message by killing a person. That's immoral. Not for incapacitation. I disagree with Kent. We have the obligation to build escape-proof prisons and safe prisons. We should kill for one reason and one reason only. They deserve it. In 3 words. In 1 word, justice.
Thank you, Robert Blecker. And that concludes round 1 of this debate, where our motion is abolish the death penalty. Now we move on to round 2 of this debate, where our motion is abolish the death penalty. In round 2, the debaters address one another directly, and they take questions from me and from you, our live audience here in New York. The motion, again, is abolish the death penalty. The team arguing for the motion to abolish, Barry Scheck and Diane Rust-Tierney. We heard them argue that the death penalty represents a broken policy that fails to protect public safety, that undermines the fair administration of justice. Too many examples of racial bias in its in execution of the policy. It's too arbitrary. They argue also that there is an alternative punishment, which would be life without parole. The team arguing against the motion, Ken Scheidegger and Robert Blecker, argue that the system is not perfect, but it's not very broken. Some people deserve to die, they say. They disagree with one another on whether deterrence is the issue or not, but they make the argument that the data on deterrence is murky, as well as the data on racial bias and life without parole is described as not very punishing. I want to go to the team that's arguing to abolish the death penalty and point out that to some degree what your opponents are saying is that the policy is not perfect but could be perfected. And given that hypothetical, if the problems that you specified with the death penalty were fixed, would that change your position on the justice of the death penalty? Diane Rust-Tierney.
I'll go first. I mean, I think that the real question is whether it can be fixed. I mean, we've been at this for over 40 years. The court has looked at this, and what we've seen is as the justices have looked at this case, one by one, they're coming to say, you know, this isn't going to work. So the question really is, do we continue to do this?
Ready to turn right.
Well, and you're missing a point here when you ask a loaded question like that, if it could be perfected.
Well, no, it's your opponent's argument is that...
my proponent's argument is that it should be effective, swift, and sure, right?
Right, and your argument was, here's what's wrong with it, this is wrong with it, this was wrong with it. So I think it's quite logical to say if those wrongs could be addressed, what does that leave for you?
It's an impossible hypothetical. I'm a law professor. I hate to fight the hypothetical, but
okay. So why is it impossible?
You know, if you're making a public policy argument and you're living in a fairyland where you actually believe that you're going to eliminate the risk of executing innocent people, which you didn't mention, John, as a major cause to the death penalty, which we now know is much greater than we ever did before. Not just because of DNA testing, but in 2009, the National Academy of Sciences has just indicated in a groundbreaking report that fingerprints, ballistics, bite mark evidence, pattern evidence, all kinds of other evidence that we used to rely on and think we're so sure are in doubt, and we're now trying to get all these resources together to do basic and applied research and make it reliable.
Let me bring then to Robert Blecker your opponent's point now that in fact it could not be fixed on this particular point, that we could never get to 100% certainty that an innocent person would never be executed. Do you think that's true? And if so, does that concern you seriously?
Well, of course I'm concerned about executing an innocent person. Every retributivist would find that the ultimate horror, and I just want to express my respect for what Barry Scheck does with the Innocence Project. That is fundamentally a retributive program. We don't want the innocent being executed. You say 100% certainty. I'm not 100% Broadway where a truck might jump the curb and kill them for the sake of convenience. Surely if I'm willing to take an infinitesimal risk of those I love for the sake of convenience, I'm willing to take that same kind of risk for those I detest for the sake of something much more sacred, which is justice.
Let me bring Diane.
I was going to say, we're talking as if the only thing out there is the death penalty. The vast majority of homicides do not result in a death sentence. The vast majority of cases that are resolved have